what are those spiritual laws?
Well, there are 5 of them. And the first one is the power of our subconscious to create our lives. From the time of Freud, we as a culture have believed that how we are today and who we are today was predetermined by stuff that happened to us in our childhoods. But more recent psychological research shows that our vision of ourselves in the future, our ideal future self, our belief in that and our clarity around that is actually more compelling to who and how we are today than anything that's happened in our past. And the research shows that if we are determined by what happened in our past, it's because that vision of ourselves in the future isn't big enough or magnetic enough or compelling enough to influence how we're behaving today.
Welcome to the 1000 Days Sober podcast. My name is Lee Davey. I'm not an alcoholic. I refuse to be anonymous. I am someone that doesn't drink alcohol, and I spend every waking moment of my life helping other people do the same, like right now. How's it going, folks? Hope you're doing well out there in the world. What's been going on in my life? Just very quickly, Liza and I and Zia, we just found a 12-month rental property in Cardiff in South Wales here. So we're going to be moving into our home. It's the first time we will have our own home since Zia was born, right? So like probably around 5-6 years now. Zia's going to be 6 at the end of the month. So really looking forward to that, really excited about that. It can, people say like when you're traveling around the world and stuff, what a wonderful experience it is. But at the same time, it's super challenging, right? Like it's super challenging. You're on the move all the time. You have to really get used to being uncomfortable all the time, which is a little bit like if you want to be someone that doesn't drink alcohol and live a self-led life, right? Like if that's what you want, I really need you to take a trek. Take a walk to the edge of your comfort zone and start playing around in the tension that separates your comfort zone from the unknown, right? And that's what happens when you don't have a home. You always thrust into uncomfortable situations that you don't have a mental map for. You don't have a mental map probably for being someone that doesn't drink alcohol, right? And that is destabilizing, that is worrying, but it's not until you start playing around at the edges of your comfort zone in that tension that you realize how truly powerful you are. And let me tell you something, every single one of you listening to this is more than capable of being someone that doesn't drink alcohol and living a self-led life. You've just got to, as Allison will tell you, as we talk about her 5 spiritual laws of sobriety today, you just have to take action. When? Now, right? Now, because you are more than capable and you're powerful enough to do it, okay? What's going on in the Strive world? Really good stuff, actually. We just started creating some quests. So we've got about 6 quests going at the moment. Most of them are in the area of flow. Why are we focusing on flow? Well, we've learned at Strive that the most important thing is not to count your alcohol-free days, but to really understand how often you are operating above the line in being conscious in a state of flow, with clarity, with compassion, with love, and how many times we are spending it below the line in drama, in chaos, in judgment, and blame, and villainy, and victimhood, right? And victim consciousness. And we're finding actually that when we are in the act of doing something, right? When we're in the act of doing something, and that thing that we're doing is aligned with our meaning and purpose, and it doesn't even have to be aligned with our meaning and purpose, but the thing that we're doing, if we like it or we enjoy it, it actually keeps us in what Stephen Porges would say in polyvagal theory, in our social engagement system. So we're not triggered, right? So we are almost in a flow state. So when we are not doing something, we found at Strive that very often it is the human condition, very normal, for us to think about the future and worry about it, or think about the past and worry about that as well. So what we are trying to do is create quests which align with flow states, right? So I'll give an example. busy work. If you're ironing while you listen to a podcast or you're watching TV or you're listening to some music or something, you will generally not be thinking too much, and you'll generally go into that social engagement system outside of the sympathetic nervous system. You'll be in that really chilled parasympathetic nervous system state, which we love because you don't want to drink alcohol when you're in that state, right? So like just ironing is really cool. So we have a quest over at Strive that says, hey, come into our Discord community and check in every day for 7 days. That is one of our quests. And then we have a harder quest, check in for 14 days, check in for 30 days, right? We also know that teamwork is really important when it comes to being someone that doesn't drink alcohol. So commenting on other people's posts and commenting on other people's Strive method assignments is also a quest. Completing your Strive method assessments is really good mental work, really gets you in that flow state. So we've got quests for that as well. And we know that relationships are really important. So we started to build relationship quests where you sit down with your partner and you ask them a series of questions and listen to them ask you a series of questions. The strivers are really getting into it. More women are getting into it than the men. The men are still sitting in the stands a little bit. But what's important about these quests is they're fun. They give you a sense of meaning and purpose. You're not alone. You can get your pom-poms out and your rah-rahs and really celebrate and cheer people on who are doing them. And you can be the recipient of a lot of well dones and congratulatory hugs and kisses and pats on the back when you achieve these quests, right? And while you're doing it, you're growing, you're healing. It's amazing. It really is. And me and Kate talk about this a little bit. If you want to get involved in that, email me at strivemethod@gmail.com and I will give you more information, okay? So here is Kay Allison. We are going to speak about Kay's 5 spiritual laws to sobriety. She was a senior vice president at a global ad agency and a single mother at a time when her drinking got way out of control and she decided that she needed to rein it in and become alcohol-free. Since then, Kay has helped hundreds of women stop the drinking spiral and live a wildly successful and satisfying life substance-free using her Juicy AF program. So AF, alcohol-free, all right? Juicy alcohol-free program. Kay is an executive coach, a clairvoyant, a minister. She was an adjunct professor at Northwestern University, and she's also authored 2 books. So you can go to Amazon and buy Juicy AF. And in January 2023, her second book, Stop the Drinking Spiral, Unleash the Future, will be out as well, okay? After a year of going alcohol-free, just a year, she launched her first company. She called it the Energy Infuser, and it was an agency to help Fortune 200 companies create new 100 million products and businesses. Together, those clients generated $2 billion in annual revenue, and she went on to create the Energy Annex, a modern focus group facility that won numerous awards. And she also co-founded Farm&Oven, a natural food company, which she sold 4 years later. And she lives in a pine forest, meditates by a waterfall every day, absolutely loves her family, and lives a juicy alcohol-free life over in Boulder, California. If you want to learn more about what she's doing, tune in towards the end where we talk about it, or you can go to juicyaf.life/laws or juicyaf.live/1000 days if you want to get some free stuff that Kay has got going over there, okay? Get into this, love it, listen to it, but most important, take action and implement her 5 spiritual laws to be sober, and check out what she's doing at Juicy AF, which is a woman's only program. But if you're a man, still listen to this podcast because you get a lot out of it. Much love, everybody. Let's just go for it, Kay, innit?
Let's do it, Lee.
Let's have a chat. Let's start by saying that I love your glasses. They're amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, they've become my trademark since the advent of Zoom being what we do.
I actually remember, related to alcohol, I guess, is I think I'm the only one in my family that doesn't have glasses. And there were periods of my life when I was younger where, for example, the other day I went into the optician to just have an eye test, and they said, you're kind of borderline. Probably when you come back in 5 years, you might need some glasses, but you're kind of borderline. If you had some, it would improve your eyesight, but if you don't, you'll be all right. And I was just like, okay, I'm not going to pay for glasses. but when I was younger, there was a part of me that wanted them to look cool, right? Like because I was in that I need to fit in energy. I really didn't need them, except I was like, well, if I have glasses, I look cool. And I actually wore them for a while just because I felt it increased my status, which is, has a lot to do with our decision to drink alcohol, right?
Absolutely. That pernicious lie that on our own, we're not good enough, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You got it. You got it. You ever suffer from that?
No, but I've heard about it. No kidding.
So tell me, Juicy. Tell me about Juicy while I switch my phones off so they don't beep. Tell me about Juicy. Juicy AF.
Well, AF also means alcohol free, not just what you think it means. And the reason behind the name, honestly, Lee, is because everything else that I've seen around sobriety is so serious.
Uh-huh.
And I drank for fun and color and amusement and glamour,
Yeah.
And if sobriety were gray and dull and miserable, I wouldn't still be alcohol free.
So the juicy element was more about, well, it's juicy, right? So what about the actual the program and the work you do? Should talk about that a little bit.
So Juicy AF right now is a community, a digital community. It is a program, and it's also a very highly curated mastermind.
I like it. And is it just entirely for women?
It's only for women.
Why did you make that decision?
For 3 reasons. The first is that the overlap between substance abuse issues and trauma is really, really high, right? I think it's 70% of all the people with substance abuse issues have experienced trauma. And for women, most of that trauma comes at the hands of men. So being in a space where it's only women, it feels safer. They feel much more comfortable being revealing. The second thing is that most of us, when we were drinking, were pretty sexually promiscuous. And in a mixed space, a co-ed space, if you will, it sends the wrong signals and you get the wrong kind of attention if you're very out about that around men. And then the third reason is that when women are alone, we talk very differently than we do if we're talking to men. And there's a linguist from Georgetown named Deborah Tannen who's noticed this with kids who are as young as 2 years old, that the little boys will be creating hierarchies of who's up and who's down. And the little girls are creating shared experiences. Oh, that happened to me too. Just our language patterns are more circular and networked and inclusive. And we don't do the one up, one down that men tend to do and that we do when we are interacting with men.
It's funny you mentioned children. My daughter is going to be 6 now in a couple of weeks, and she's been hanging around with a young boy who's around 5, and completely different energy. A really, really different energy. One's tearing around, wanting to stamp on everybody's face, and it's quite scary and intimidating even at that age. I walk around the streets a lot, looking at just thinking, and observing and seeing the difference in sizes between men and women, and, pondering what it would be like to live in fear, a lot of times, especially around the evening, dusk, nighttime,
You
and
bet.
that's what comes up for me when I hear you talk about your environment or why men aren't there. It seems like either the number one goal is to create a safe environment. How important is safety, do you think, when it comes to helping people to stop drinking?
I think feeling safe allows us to be vulnerable
Mm,
and allows, I know when I feel safe, I'm much more readily emotionally available and willing to talk about intimate things. If I feel like someone's going to prey on me or take advantage of what I'm saying, then I shut down. I
mm,
feel like we all walk through the world with these fish bowls over our heads. And you can see through the fishbowl, like I can see you through my fishbowl, but layered on top of it is all kinds of likes and dislikes and ideas and attitudes and perceptions, stories. And one thing that I've noticed is how many of the slang terms for being intoxicated are destructive terms, right?
mm.
We're smashed, we're plastered, we're annihilated, we're wasted.
Well,
And I
hammered.
think what that refers, we're hammered, right?
Mm,
It refers to we're able to get out of that self preoccupation and we can get outside of thinking about everything and what we think about it. Do we like it? Do we not? What does his expression mean about me? Whatever
mm.
it is that we get hung up in. And in order to recover, I have had to develop ways, and I teach other women ways to get outside that fishbowl
Mm.
that don't include getting drunk.
Mm. And it's not easy, right? It's not easy. What have I found myself getting in? Like in the last couple of days, I found myself getting into the cuddling up on the settee, having some ice cream with my wife while we watch a show, right? And on the face of it, it seems all right. It seems like we're connecting and we're having a bit of ice cream, no harm there. But then today, when I catch myself at a little bit of a low, I'm thinking about the ice cream. Like I'm thinking about the future when I will be sat on the couch with my wife, and then internal dialogue goes on. Then is what are you going to go and get some ice cream? Can you eat ice cream for 2 days on the trot? Is this really healthy? Because I keep thinking about it. And that's what it was like with alcohol, and it's so what do you make of that? The old ice cream, looking forward to an excitement about an event.
Uh, I think there's a difference between being excited about an event and being obsessive about it.
Mm,
And it's usually a pretty fine line, and I can usually fool myself pretty much about where
yeah,
that line is.
I would be the obsessive. My wife would be the excited. She would be excited. If it's not there, it's not there. I would be kind of missing it. Oh, there's a hole there, and I think I don't know your opinion, but when it comes to um, suddenly, you join a program like Juicy or the Stripe Method, and if we're not careful, it could be like, okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to take this alcohol away from you because it's really bad, and we don't want you to drink it. And then there's nothing there. It's like, and this has been their mistress or their man or their one go-to that cures all of their issues, all of their problems, their most exciting moment of the night, and we take it away, right? And we don't fill it with anything else. First of all, what is your thoughts around that? And secondly, what do you teach your crowd to do to fill that space, to fill that void? How do you deal with that?
Well, it was Aristotle who actually said that nature abhors a vacuum. So humankind has known this for millennia. And I think you're absolutely right. We have to it's a spiritual law, right? That substitution is the way to make changes. So I'm thinking of that eat this, not that diet. And it works because it's a substitution. What I've found, Lee, is that at the beginning, when someone is getting free from alcohol, there are ways to take the edge off that don't involve drinking, right? You can move your body, and that helps kind of regulate your system. You can eat, you can masticate, you can chew on something, right? Of course, sugar in the long run can be another addiction, but that's a whole other ball of wax. Medication can help people with the cravings. Meditate can be another great way of regulating your system and something to do. And my favorite one is masturbating. Having an orgasm certainly changes.
When you said masticating, I thought, is she saying masturbating? You know, we just got our title, masticating and masturbating. I love it. But, I mean, it's interesting you say those things, because like all of those things can be, if you think about it, all of those things can be used in a healthy way and also in a dysfunctional way, right?
Absolutely. Anything taken to its extreme can be deleterious, can be harmful to us. But I will tell you, nobody ever went to jail for eating a pint of Ben & Jerry's with his wife on the couch.
No, I mean, for me, you know, both with sugar and masturbation, it's kind of like, I always say to people in Strive, we follow a metaphor from the Conscious Leadership Group about being above or below the line. And, our goal is to try to be above the line as often as we can in a state of consciousness and clarity and awareness and responsibility. So, I often say, okay, so if we just talk about sugar, I want to eat some sugar. Well, am I above the line? Like, do I want to eat sugar and I'm feeling really conscious, I'm feeling really vivid, I'm feeling really clear-headed, and I want to take responsibility over this decision, and I just love ice cream and I want to eat some right now? Or am I below the line and I'm feeling lonely and I'm feeling uncomfortable or feeling like a victim, or I'm feeling a little bit blamey and judgy, and now I want to eat ice cream? Then I'm saying, or I want to masturbate. Like that's when I'm like, okay, hang on a minute. Hang on a minute. Are you using this substance, or are you behaving in this way because there's something going on that you don't want to deal with, right?
Well, and so once someone, and the way that I talk about it is through that, okay, I've separated from alcohol.
Yeah.
Right? Those other ways of taking the edge off work as a substitute. But then the adventure becomes, how do I not develop an edge in the first place? How can I live through my day so that 5 o'clock, oh my God, I've got an edge that I've got to take off, or I've just been stuck in the TSA line at the airport and that airport bar looks good, or whatever the scenario is. How can I walk through those situations so I don't develop an edge to start with? And that's where I have articulated 5 spiritual laws of the universe that when we live them in our day-to-day lives, reduce the agita that we feel to a point where we're living with a sense of peace and a sense of ease and a sense of love, even as we walk through difficult situations.
What are those spiritual laws?
Well, there are 5 of them. And the first one is the power of our subconscious to create our lives. From the time of Freud, we as a culture have believed that how we are today and who we are today was predetermined by stuff that happened to us in our childhoods. But more recent psychological research shows that our vision of ourselves in the future, our ideal future self, our belief in that and our clarity around that is actually more compelling to who and how we are today than anything that's happened in our past. And the research shows that if we are determined by what happened in our past, it's because that vision of ourselves in the future isn't big enough or magnetic enough or compelling enough to influence how we're behaving today. And my experience and what I've seen happen with the women that I interact with is once they can really get clear about that big, juicy, magnetic, peaceful future, that it's much easier to move towards that rather than away from the things that got them in trouble in the past. And if you think about it, like this is so interesting to me. Everything that's in my life today, I have created through choice and through attitudes and through decisions that I've made. I have wanted to live in Boulder, Colorado since I was 4 years old. It took me a lot of years to get here, but I live here now. And that's the kind of movement towards something big and magnetic and juicy in the future that our subconscious will create as long as we take some actions as well.
I like that.
So that's law number one.
So almost like a lot of people, when they're going through it, they just can't see a way out of the molasses, right? So they have no mental map. So they haven't got a vision, and they're not able to match that vision with a feeling. It just doesn't exist for them. And so they're just stuck in the molasses. And you're saying, no, if we can get our vision, we can curate it, and we can match feeling to it, then that will give us the hope, I guess, is a key word that comes up with me, the hope to be able to get through because you've got something to aim for and something that you believe in, which I think is really important.
It's exactly true. And what you just said is so important. It's not just being able to see it, it's being able to feel it. And I have an image of myself on stage in front of an audience, and I know what I'm wearing, and I know who I can see in the wings, and I can see the scenario and laughing, and I can feel it. And who knows how that's going to come into my world. And I choose to believe that it is going to happen.
Which is super powerful.
Right.
And it doesn't take any more energy to think that than to think that it's not going to happen.
What the future is different but better. I used to walk around with this sense of impending doom. I was terrified. I had all of these what if scenarios that were being, sent to Siberia and being cut off and penniless and homeless. And but what if it's different but better?
Yeah, I like that.
So I'm trying to coax people into a better future, because when I was drinking, I was, felt horrible, but I thought that a life without alcohol was going to be worse.
Even worse. Yeah.
Even worse. I was going to be handing out pamphlets and little flowers at the airport or something. And, what I want to talk about is my life transformed within 5 years of putting down the drink. I married the love of my life, and 20 years later, I'm still wild about him. I adopted my third child. I wrote a book. I started 2 successful businesses, and I increased my income by a multiple of 6 in 5 years. And I say that not to brag, because I'm anything special, but to demonstrate to other people, when you cut that cord to the anchor of alcohol, all the energy that I was spending just trying to get up to normal, and the energy I was spending to paint a hologram out here so you wouldn't notice what was really going on, I had all that energy that just catapulted my life into a completely different experience.
Yeah, Sarah is one of our strivers. She's contemplating what to do, going to get a job next month, and she said, I don't really know what I want to do, she said, but I feel pulled towards helping out with mental health and addiction, and I just wrote back in the forum and said, that's funny, because I guess that's what I do. And when I worked on the railway for 20 years, there's no way on earth I would ever have imagined I would be doing it. It just was not in my worldview. It just wasn't there. I was a railwayman, and I was going to be a railwayman till the day I die. So never say never, And just a side story, I just want to share a side story with you, because, we just touched upon this belief that, and a real compelling and powerful belief that without alcohol, like, things are going to be so much worse. I was looking after a dog the other day, a pug, and the people who were supposed to take care of him were late coming back. So I said, no worries, I'll stay here. I'll stay here as long as it takes. And then she sent me a message back. She said, no, my friend is going to come round. She'll relieve you of your duty at 10:30. Just let her in when she gets there. Oh, okay. So the door goes, I open the door, and in comes this lady, in a whirlwind. And she's like, where's the alcohol? So I said, it's my name's Lee, by the way. And the alcohol's over in the cupboard, right? So she's like, whoa, what have we got? So I'm like, well, there's wine, and I think I've seen something else. So she gets some red wine, and she says, would you want a drink? I said, no. I said, I've not had a drink for 12 years. I always like to slip that in there. I've not had a drink for 12 years. Oh, well done, she said. That's first thing. Well done. And then she started to have a drink. And she said, the reason I'm drinking, because this happens to me all the time. When I tell people I don't drink, they tell me the reason why they do drink. The reason that I'm drinking is about such a stressful day, right? Like, such a stressful day. And here's my point to everybody listening who thinks that alcohol, you cannot have a life without alcohol, right? That woman just walked into my life. She never met me in her life, ever. I'm a fairly interesting guy. I'm a good listener, right? And I have a bit of empathy and compassion about me as well. And she come in and just said, hey, who are you? And we just engaged in talk and conversation and shared our life. We didn't even have to go down the vulnerability rabbit hole. We just get to know each other. Do you think she would be a little less stressed? Of course she would, right? She would loosen up when she felt safe and secure around me. She would open up a little bit more. She would have dialogue, communication, connection with another human being, and she would feel okay. The wine is an illusion. It would just actually, the more she drank, it would disconnect her from me, because I would feel unsafe and uncomfortable sharing with somebody who isn't 100% present. And she wouldn't be able to remember and be 100% present because she's screwing her brain up with this toxin, right? So for those of you listening that, hey, I cannot get a life, just play that back. That's just one little tiny example of how we can change the perspective of looking at an event for it to be completely different to the belief that you have,
All right, I want to tell my version of that story.
Go for it.
So when I first got sober, I traveled 50% of the time, and a lot of that was global travel. I was in Asia or South America or Europe. A lot. I was in the airport going through security multiple times a week. And, you go through the passport check, and then you have to decide which screening line to get in. And I'd be deciding between two lines, and I'd pick one, and then I would mentally note the person that took my place in the other line. And then the race was on. In my mind, anyway. Nobody else knew. But it made me so impatient, in so much of a hurry, And then I had this epiphany one day, which was, well, what if instead of racing somebody and making my self-worth dependent on whether I chose well or not, what if I tried to be friendly and kind to the people around me? So since adopting that attitude, I have lifted people's suitcases up onto the roller. I always make eye contact with the TSA agents and say good morning and thank you and how's your day going? And I even returned a guy's wallet to him. He had left his wallet and I was able to track him down at the airport and return his wallet to him. And you know what? I don't have an edge then to take off with a drink.
Yeah, because you've diverted that energy. You've got that energy and you've morphed it in and put it somewhere else and put it to work somewhere else, somewhere more valuable, in terms of connection instead of disconnection.
Well, that's the spiritual law.
Instead of just sitting here. Well, should we jump to the fifth one now, or should we just go through number 2? Does it matter?
No, it doesn't matter. So
okay, let's go on the fifth one.
Is the power of connection and the power of service, which is exactly what I was just talking about. It's the distinction between what's in it for me, getting through here fast, what's in it for me, and what's in it from me. How can I be kind? How can I acknowledge this TSA agent as a human being and not just an impediment to my agenda? And that's why I created a community, Lee, because when I drank, I was so busy hiding behind my hologram of what I thought looked perfection, that I was desperately alone and lonely and felt like a misfit and like I didn't belong and like something was existentially wrong with me. And so when I can be of service to somebody else, I'm not the center of my attention anymore. Like, remember Copernicus? He was the one that said, oh, no, it's not the earth in the center of the universe, it's the sun. In the same way, if I put you in the center of my universe for the time that we're on this call, then I'm thinking about you and how I can be of service to you rather than thinking about me and what I can get out of the situation. It brings that edge down. There isn't an edge when I'm of service.
Becoming ambivalent around our alcohol use is confusing, uncomfortable, and downright terrifying. Alcohol is so embedded in our life that we can't imagine our life without it, and at Strive, we get that. So why not take one step at a time, starting with diving deep into our book, The Strive Method, Control Alcohol for 30 Days Before It Controls You for the Next 30 Years. Head over to www.thestrivemethod.com to purchase and receive a Santa sack full of freebies today. I love that one. That's one that is work in progress for me. I mean, life's a work in progress, but I'm definitely I'm the type of guy who kind of like, my wife will say, "Pass me the sparkling water," and I'll grab it and pour my drink before I pour her drink. Like little things like that. So I have an overarching desire to serve people. We wouldn't be doing this otherwise. But there is also an element of me that kind of automatically goes to put myself first sometimes. And I actually have a story to share, which I think will be important to both our communities and people listening to this who want to get into a community and a little bit worried about it. Because I know it's not an easy transition to listen to a podcast to dive into a community. I really want you to actually rewind and listen back to what Kay said about connection and service other people, because it's really important. It's very easy to join a community like Juicy or Strive and to hang in the shadows and not say anything. That's easy, right? It's also easy to be in a community and turn up one day and say, "Hi, I'm doing really well. This is what I did today," and that's it, right? And I know for people listening, even that is a stretch, right? But the real gold here is when you go into a community and you read other people's posts and you interact with them. Like, that is service, that is community, because without that interaction, without showing up and really witnessing and making people feel seen and heard and mattered, you'll stand out like a sore thumb. Like, especially with the women in the communities, they'll be like, this person just seems to just be in it taking they're not really giving, right? Like, and you're not going to get the most out of the experience. I'm talking from personal experience, right? Like I've been in many coaching containers where it's all been about what can I get out of this, Kay, right? And the really wise ones in there are like, Lee, let me have a little word a minute, brother. This is all about you. How can you switch this around? It's like, holy shit. Right. Okay. Right. So I don't know if you want to comment on that, but that's what I'm hearing about. That's what I wanted to comment on, your fifth law, which I thought was important.
I want to say two things about that. Lest you think that I think I'm perfect, very often I say out loud, don't be an asshole.
Like
so sometimes that is my standard. And then the second thing, it actually relates to one of the other spiritual laws, is do something different, DSD. If you do the same thing today as you did yesterday, tomorrow's going to be exactly like today. If you're not happy with today, do something different so that you have a different tomorrow. I hear a lot in the social media world about manifesting. And, that first spiritual law is getting very clear about what you do want to have become a reality in your life. But without action, I also don't buy into the hustle culture, right? But without action, taking action, nothing happens. And so the third spiritual law actually is actions first, feelings and reality follows. That we have to take actions. We need to do something different. And to your example about the people in a community that have joined but not written their introduction, or that haven't participated in a poll, or so if they haven't interacted, they haven't written their introduction, they haven't commented on somebody's post, and they're feeling like nobody understands them, my encouragement is today, do something different.
Yes. Can I add a Lego brick onto that, actually? So for the people who are listening to this going, Kaylee, I have no idea how difficult it is for me to just say my name in a forum because I'm worried I'm going to be rejected. We see you, we hear you, and I want to add the Lego brick. What if the opposite was true? What if just for today, when you said to yourself, I cannot type here because people are going to think I'm an idiot, or I'm waffling on, or I'm revealing too much? What if the opposite was true? What if we didn't think you was waffling? What if we didn't think you was an idiot? What if we loved what you wrote? Right? Like, just try to live in that world for a little bit. What if the opposite was true? And I think that could help you, because at some point, if you want to improve your life, you cannot dodge action forever. Like, it's going to come at some point. And this is the interesting thing. It's like, let's talk about this. It's like, when is the right time? Like, I teach in the strike method. Right now is the right time. Like there is, and I've spoke to people on the podcast who I super really respect, and they've been like, you got to wait until you get into an environment and you trust people in order for you to be able to do that. And I'm kind of like, well, actually, I lead with trusting the entire 7.8 billion people who live on this planet. And then when they give me a reason not to trust them, then I'll change my tact. And I got to be honest, in 47 years of being on this planet, not many people have let me down, right? Like, not many people. When I open up and say, I don't know anything about anything, and I'm pretty good at that, I don't get a lot of people taking a piss out of me doing that, right? So we hear you, we see you, and sometimes you need somebody to grab you and chuck you in the middle of the ring and say, speak,
Yeah, if nothing changes, nothing changes.
Yeah.
And I do things that make me uncomfortable pretty much every darn day.
Yeah.
They say, make fear your friend. I swear to God, it's my best friend at this point. I also think about it this way. Think about it as an experiment. So try something for 30 days and experiment. Like, run it like a science experiment. If I participate in my community every day for 30 days, I wonder what would happen. And if it isn't a good result, don't do it anymore. Just play with it. And if 30 days is too much, do it for 7, do it for 5. But this sense of, I think in America, we feel like if something is important, we have to be serious about it. And I know from my lived experience that if something's important, it's critical to be light about it, because that's where creativity comes in. That's where spirituality comes in. That's where connection comes in. If we can play with an idea, with a new behavior, if we can invite people into it, coax people into it, invite them to experiment with it, make their participation, that initial participation, so minuscule that it makes you laugh. Like when I teach people to meditate, I ask them to count their breath for 30 seconds. Who doesn't have 30 seconds,
Yeah.
And it makes you laugh. It's so ridiculous. And I find it's more important to do something teeny on a regular basis than to do something huge every once in a while.
Do you just got me thinking there of this kind of like a bit of a paradox is, what I heard you saying there was find a way to explore and develop your feminine essence more. And at the same time, that is amazing advice. The people who are trying to stop drinking are likely have used alcohol as a way to access that feminine essence, and without it, they struggle, right? And that's why they kind of like slip into the masculine of seriousness and stoicism and difficulty and challenge and always trying to do something to fill up the space that isn't play or rest. And it's a paradox, and it's something we have to deal with as a community and come together and really help and support people who struggle in that way. I'm one of them. I'm one of them that leans so much easier into my masculine than I do my feminine, which is, and I'm great at play. I'm great at being creative, but it takes a nudge for me to get in there. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I really do. And I think that there's a place for the whole panoply of options. I have found, though, with some of the well-known programs for addiction recovery that are out there, it's very rule-bound. And there's a lot of shaming if you don't do things the right way. And that doesn't sound very inviting to me.
No. We have quests. So what we do is we're just starting to build it. So it's not extensive yet, but we have quests so people can choose what quest they want to do. So they're participating themselves. So we have a quest, for example, a tougher and toughest options where you comment on other people's posts. So for 7 days, you take the tough challenge on and you comment on other people's posts. For 14 days, you can do it, or 30 days straight. So that is what you're talking about. It allows you to experiment and create a hypothesis to see what it really feels like. And people don't stop at 7 and go, "Nah, I'm not going to do 14." It was too uncomfortable. Because we know as creators that we know that humans have an amazing capacity to do the most remarkable things. Just need a little help over that hump, right?
Right. Little nudge, a little invitation.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm trying to do, is to invite people into a life that's free from alcohol, where they're free to create something that is so much more magnificent than they could have even imagined when they were in that spiral.
Yeah. I hear you. So what do we have? We have 1, 3, 5.
Let's talk about 2 and 4.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay. So The second spiritual law is the law of substitution. And we already talked about, have an orgasm instead of a glass of wine. Great. But on a deeper level, there are old stories about myself and my place in the world that underlay my desire to drink. And this existential fear that somehow I am not enough, or its twin sister, you are way too much. Mm-hmm. And neither one of them gives you a lot of wiggle room where you actually feel comfortable. And so when I get down to those old stories, like you need to change in order to make me comfortable, when I can get down to the root of what those really are, then I can substitute a spiritual principle, which is its antidote. So in this place of I'm not enough, from that old story, what would you think the spiritual antidote would be?
The spiritual antidote to I'm not enough. I don't know. I'm gonna go with. I mean, I think everybody's enough.
Right. So acceptance.
Yeah, acceptance.
Right? Acceptance. I also have found that being really honest about what I think about myself.
Yeah,
dilutes it, takes the sting out, right? I find being of service a great substitute. I find being in nature to be an amazing antidote. And so when I can develop, 3 or 4 antidotes, spiritual antidotes to that flaw, then I know that when it's up front and center for me, I know my repertoire of spiritual principles that I can embody instead. I can be really disarmingly honest about, wow, I feel really nervous about this right now. I can't tell if it's nervous or excited, but I have a lot of energy, and people, the reaction that I have gotten 100% of the time, Lee, has been people are disarmed and they want to be helpful. And so this idea of substituting a spiritual principle, and they're pretty anodyne, it's honesty, it's kindness, it's service, it's forgiveness, which is the next spiritual principle. It's hope. Those, they're pretty anodyne virtues or values, if you will, but they really do make a very powerful substitute for my old stories. So my story about TSA, my story was, I'm in a hurry, you get out of my way. And now my story is, wow, I am wading through so many opportunities to be kind and to see people.
So what I hear there is we use alcohol to provide us with some value. And what I'm hearing you're encouraging is that we have a backup plan, which will eventually become the plan, which and the plan towards being rather than doing, right? So we're doing alcohol, but eventually we will be someone who just doesn't need it. But as a step up, here are some spiritual practices that you can use instead of. What is your teaching, guidance, advice? So how do you support people who get that rationally and logically? They might even create their spiritual toolkit, but in the moment tonight when their wife says, hey, you're going to go down the shop and get that tub of ice cream or that bottle of whiskey, they're just overtaken by the part of them that wants to drink, and they just go. Where are you on that part of the thing?
First of all, I so identify with it. Identify. How many thousands of times have I had that experience? I think that moment of truth is really tough. Really tough. And so I suggest a couple really practical tools. On our phones, we can create reminders that pop up either based on time of day of the week, or that pop up based on location. So, like when I pull up home in my car, I'll get a reminder that I've set for myself saying, remember to whatever, walk the dog or feed the dog or whatever it happens to be. And so when I'm in a moment of calm and right-mindedness, I will set up reminders for myself based on location, liquor store, bar, wherever it is, or based on time and day. So I always was drinking Thursdays by 6:00 at the latest. And so I would set a reminder on my phone for 4:30 saying, whatever was going to be motivated. Yeah. Hey, remember, friend, this isn't going to end well,
Yeah.
And it's just a very practical, tangible way to intervene on yourself because you know your habits better than anybody else does.
When I was a gambling addict, I used to have a piece of paper in my wallet. So when I would go in there for more money, I can't remember exactly what it said, but it was something along the lines of, look, Lee, you are not going to want to read this. You're going to want to ignore it. But I'm telling you, the next day, you can regret it if you do. You're out of control right now, and you're just going to lose more money. Go home. That's something like that,
That's exactly what I'm talking about, but using technology to interrupt ourselves.
I never thought about, my alarm goes off every 2 hours just so I can check in with myself. I've never thought about location alarms. That's really clever. And that got me thinking that I think in the future, we'll have wearables that will actually trigger when our sympathetic nervous system state is activated, the alarm will trigger. Because I think a lot of the times we end up drinking is it creeps up on us. So, for example, when I last year when I did my Elementum coaching training with Preston Smiles and Stefanos Sifandos, Alexi Panos and Christian Hasler, they were working with me for constantly for 6 months, and I realized that even though I didn't drink, I was pretty consistently triggered. I was waking up and I was going through life, and my sympathetic nervous system was on. I was the Incredible Hulk, and I had no idea. I just thought that was how I lived. And here I was on a podcast going, yeah, I've got shit together. I don't drink. I created my own company. I did this. And I had wonderful achievements, but I had no idea that I was literally on my way to a car crash and an argument with my wife because I was incapable of being present for her because my sympathetic nervous system was activated. So I would love to see a wearable that just went beep, 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 beep. Be like, oh, wow, what's going on for me? I didn't even know I was triggered. I think that'd be super helpful. There's a business opportunity.
It's a great business idea. Yeah. And I have also found to that point, Lee, that EMT, right? Tapping, emotional freedom technique, that EFT, that really works. There are tappings for cravings, sugar cravings, alcohol cravings, whatever, that I've found to be really helpful. But it means that you have the state of mind while you're triggered to go and do a tapping.
Yeah.
And so what I've actually found is sugar after dinner is a thing for me. And so what I found is after dinner, I just go and I do the sugar craving tapping, and it kind of preempts that phase. I also know that hypnosis, and there are all kinds of energy tools that can be used to kind of deprogram that craving part of your brain. It is not in my wheelhouse of tools, and I have certainly taken advantage of some of them.
Yeah, just when you said about EFT, many a times I've got into a funk and fight with my wife, Liza, and she's just, there she is. I'm talking to her, and she's like this, and I'm like, okay, I'm triggering you. My two penny worth before we go into the final law is once you're triggered and you're in sympathetic nervous system, it's actually just flashed up in the top corner of my computer that the She-Hulk is on tomorrow, right? So it's a good example. when your sympathetic nervous system is activated, you are the Incredible Hulk, right? Now, imagine if you think about the old show when Bruce Banner and the Incredible Hulk. Bruce Banner could not control the Incredible Hulk. Nobody could control the Incredible Hulk. The only time any sense of normality came in is when the Hulk was Bruce Banner again. It's almost like sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, right? So look, if your sympathetic nervous system is activated and you end up in a blazing row with your partner, using this as an example, and then you drink and it happens, boom, 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 like that, and you haven't used your spiritual toolkit. The most important thing is you have compassion with yourself, right? And you work on getting back in alignment with integrity as soon as you feel ready to do it. And if you're in a community, that can be invaluable because it can be a lot quicker. And the quicker it is, the better. Because we all know about the fuck it's, right? We have a drink, and that part of us that really wanted a drink, it's like, yes, boom, we're in. Let's just drink for another 5 days, and then we'll deal with this on Thursday. In a community, someone like myself or Kay can be like, hey, and this is where the quests work, Kay, actually, because I found in Strive, people are on a quest of checking in. So let's say they've chosen to check in for 30 days and they drink. They're still checking in. And they never used to do that before the quest. They would disappear for a week. But now they're like, no, I'm in this quest. So they literally check in the next day and say, I drank yesterday. And it allows them to get over that vulnerability hangover without that case of the fuck it's, which I think is like super important,
I love the fact that you have quests. I might borrow that. I think it's brilliant.
Do it. Yeah, do it.
I love it. Love it. Well, what you're saying leads into the fourth spiritual law, which is that forgiveness brings freedom. And it's not just forgiveness of other people, it's forgiveness of ourselves. When I talk about forgiveness, I am not talking about condoning bad behavior. I am not talking about letting somebody off the hook for something that they did. What I'm talking about is untangling the threads that are binding us to hurtful actions or hurtful situations or hurtful people. And forgiveness is like the lubricant of letting go of those tough things, whether they're self-inflicted and I feel bad about something that I've done, or if it's someone that's been harmful to me or my kids. If you screw with my kids, that's a big deal for me. Yeah. Even more than somebody screwing with me. But if somebody screws with my kids, that's really a hot button for me. Mama bear comes out.
Yeah.
But that piece that you were saying about if I either drink and I feel bad about it, the question is, great, it happened. Now, what are you going to do? Now what? You can either extract the learning and move forward, or you can stay stuck and keep punishing yourself. Choice is pretty simple.
Yeah. We have a lesson in the Strive method, which talks about the absolute gold that you can find in these moments when you drink. Because if you join something like Juicy or Strive or AA or anything else that's out there, one of the first things that's going to happen is your awareness of your situation is going to change. It's going to be triggered. It doesn't matter actually how effective the program is. Just by being in a program, your awareness, and you're going to start to think and ask yourself questions about what's going on, So like that awareness then allows you to say, well, actually, why did I do that yesterday? And how could I have maybe done something differently? Which then leads into, as you say, the forgiveness piece, right? Like, For me, forgiveness is really tied up for me personally with with trust for me and vulnerability. So I think the reason I trust everybody is because I'm very forgiving. So if somebody betrayed my trust, um, I would find a way to forgiveness because I believe that even when someone is harming me, or I believe that anybody who's harmed me in the past has done so because they feel threatened and they need to keep themselves safe. And a part of them has chosen to hurt me as a way of keeping themselves safe. So I can find a way to forgiveness. And I need a lot of forgiveness because I don't know about you, but I screw up a lot, particularly as a father and as a husband, and as a leader of Strive. The amount of times I've had to turn around and say to my crew, I stepped over the line there with my desperation of wanting you to succeed, my masculine. I've had people leave. It's just it's human nature, right? Like you're gonna screw up.
Well, the thing that's great about screwing up all the time is that it's the fuel for change and learning.
Hmm. Yeah.
I mean, the goal here is not perfection. The goal here is to learn whatever spiritual lessons and lessons about how to be a human as we can. And those lessons are always hidden under the cloak of hurt and pain and what looks like a terrible thing. That gold's always hidden under there.
I like it. So just recap for everybody listening. What were those 5 spiritual principles?
Okay. And we'll do them in order this time. How about?
Yeah.
So the first one is the power of our subconscious to create our future. The second one is the law of substitution, a spiritual principle for an old story. The third one is actions first, feelings follow. The fourth one is forgiveness brings freedom. And the fifth one is the power of service.
I love it. And what are you up to now? How can people join Juicy? I believe you've got a book you're writing again. It's coming out in January. Tell us about that.
All kinds of good things. So if you want a download of those 5 spiritual laws, you can get them at juicyaf.life/laws. If you would like my 7-day free Stop the Drinking Spiral challenge, it's at juicyaf.life/1000 days, special for you. And if you're interested in my community, it's juicy-af.mn.co.
Okie dokie. I will put all that on the show notes. Just want to say thank you very much for coming on and spending this hour with me from Boulder, Colorado. I really appreciate it. And thank you for the work that you do. It's not easy. And your decision to turn your personal story around and really save lives of other people is quite beautiful. And I just want to honor you for that and keep up the good work. And if I can ever help you in any way, just let me know.
Lee, I so appreciate that. And I always love at the beginning of your podcast when you say, I'm not an alcoholic and I'm not anonymous, but I spend every waking moment. And that just gets me every single time. So thank you. Thank you for the opportunity and thank you for the work that you do.
Much love. Thank you. Thanks for listening to the 1000 Days Sober podcast. Without you, the listener, there is no podcast. So thank you for stepping up today. Please go to your podcast player, rate and review the show. It will help people get to know about it a little bit more and we can save some more lives. I just want to say a special thanks to our producer, Stan, who is currently in the Ukraine. If you would like to help and support Stan and his family, email us at thestrivemethod@gmail.com and we'll find a way to do that. Special thanks to all of our guests who make this show so magical and our Strive family for uniting in our common goal to be people who don't drink alcohol and live self-led lives. And if you want to join us, email us at thestrivemethod@gmail.com. And lastly, if you enjoyed this show, tell somebody about it. You could seriously change somebody's life. Strive on, everybody.